Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So, thank you for having me. My name is Balpreet Singh. Most of you I think I know or have seen. Otherwise, for those of you who haven't, I'm legal counsel with the World Sikh Organization of Canada. I've done Khalsa camps in England and I've done a couple here, so it's always a pleasure. This is a special year for all of us. It's 30 years after 1984. So 1984 is something that still pulls at our heartstrings. It's a very sensitive issue for us. And we talk about Shahidi. We talk about the Shaheeds of June 1984. We talk about the Shaheeds of November 1984. And we talk about all the Shaheeds after 1984. But every day in our Ardas, we talk about those Shaheeds. But what does Shahidi mean? There are a lot of misconceptions. There are a lot of people that don't quite understand the difference between, for example, in India, anyone that dies in a battle or anyone that dies for the cause of the nation is called a Shaheed. Some people are taking that interpretation, that understanding of Shahidi, and understanding that to be the Sikh understanding. So what I want to do is threefold. One, talk about the ideal of Shahidi. What is the Sikh principle of Shahidi? What is that ideal? The second part of the lecture I want to focus on is Sikh leadership. Often our Shaheeds have been our leaders. So what does our leadership look like? And finally, I want to talk about the current situation in the Sikh Panth and what do we really need. One thing I want to say at the outset, these are my vichar that I've come to an understanding of. So if someone doesn't agree, that's totally fine. I'm not claiming to be an authority. I'm just giving you my understanding. And secondly, this isn't meant to say who is a Shaheed, who isn't a Shaheed. So I don't want any questions, well, is that person a Shaheed then? Because I'm no one to judge. This is just to tell you what my understanding of that ideal is. Next slide. So what is the meaning of Shaheed? The word Shaheed appears sometimes in Gurbani, in Sikh literature. It's not as common. It became much more common when that era of Shaheeds began, obviously after Guru Arjan Dev Ji, but more so in the 18th century. The root of the word Shaheed is Shahada, which means witness. So a witness is someone that's willing to testify to the faith, is willing to stand on oath and on their own honor swear to that faith. Like you have someone that becomes a witness in a case, they swear that they will tell the truth. They're a witness to that. The word martyr, interestingly enough, the word martyr has the same root, which is witness. The word martyr actually also means witness. So essentially for us as Sikhs, it means someone who has sacrificed themselves for their faith. Next slide. What it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean, a Shaheed is not simply someone that dies on the battlefield. A Shaheed isn't simply someone that gave their life up for a cause. Now, there's a Punjabi ideal. Now, we always talk about the difference between Punjabi culture and Sikh culture. There's some overlap, but there are very significant differences. In Punjabi culture, we often look up to people that are very macho, that are warriors, that don't stop on the battlefield. We look up to them. We idealize them. So you have people like Jiona Maur, Dula Patti, or Jaga Daku. These have all been people that Punjabi literature has looked up upon as heroes. But what does Gurbani tell us about simply warriors? So this is a shabd. Sure ena akhiye ahankar mare dukh pave. Sura means brave warriors. We know what a sura is, right? Surma. That's not a brave warrior. That's not a surma who simply dies on the battlefield in ego. So if someone's fighting in ego, that's not a warrior for us. That's not a surma for us. Ande aap na pachanani, duje pach jave. that they're blind to who they themselves are. They're blind, that they've become blinded by their ego, by their anger, and they die in duality. At krodh se loojde, agge piche dukh paave. They fight with intense anger. And in this world and the next world, they will find pain. So imagine that. We're thinking of this warrior, sometimes even paintings of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, we see the like this. That's not the ideal of a Sikh warrior. Har jiyo ahankar na pavai, ved kook sunave. That Vaheguru is not pleased by ego, whether that's on the battlefield or otherwise. Ahankar moe se vigati gaye, mar janme fir aave. So this is a very important line. In Indian literature, someone that died on the battlefield was said to a veer gati pa gaya, a veer gati pa gaya, which meant the equivalent of shaheed. Veer gati is the Hindu or the Indic equivalent of shaheed, but Guru Sahib uses that word and changes it and says, ahankar moe, those that have died in ego on the battlefield, se vigati gaye, without gat, without liberation. Not veer gati, oh vigati gaye. Mar janme fir aave. They will die and they will be born again. So a complete contrast to that ideal of the warrior that never turns his back on the battlefield. If you are fighting in ego, if you are fighting in anger, then Guru Sahib has discounted that, saying that you will die and you will be born again, and Vaheguru is not pleased by this. Next slide. So where does Shaheedi, or where does this warrior tradition, this Surma tradition start in Sikhi? It starts with Amrit. What does Amrit mean? Mrit means death, means without. So without death. And there are several shabds that are very well known to us that will explain what that fearlessness concept is in Sikhi. So the first is Slok Mahalla Panjama, Pelna Marna Kabul Jeevan Ki Chhad Aas. First, accept death, accept that you have died, and leave all hope of life. Ho sabna ki renaka to hamare paas. Then become the dust of all people's feet. Then come to me. So the warrior that's fighting in ego, that's fighting with anger, contrast that with someone that has accepted death, but then becomes the dust of everyone's feet. That then comes into nimarta, that comes into humility. Then the shabd that is recited often when someone wants to shak amrit. The Panch Pyare have often traditionally recited this to someone that wants to shak amrit. The shabd is Jo to prem khelan ka chao, sir tar tali gali meri aao. That if you want to play the game of love, put your head on your palm and come on my path. This is Guru Nanak Dev Ji speaking. Guru Nanak Dev Ji is giving this message. Sometimes we associate putting the head on the palm with Baba Deep Singh or with Guru Gobind Singh Ji. But this is Guru Nanak Dev Ji saying, you want to play the game of love, you want to follow my path, then put your head on your hand and then come. It marg pair trijai, sir dijai, kaan na kijai. That if you put your foot on this path, then don't look back. That don't care about what the world says. That's the path of Gursikhi. That this is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. And then you have Hamri Jaat Paat Gur Satgur, Ham Bechio Sir Gur Ke. There's so many shabds in Gurbani that talk about giving your head to the Guru, that give your head to the Guru. And then Nanak Sir De Chutiya Darga Pat Pai, that you give your head to the Guru, and then you'll find a place in Dargah in the next world, in Vaheguru's court. Next slide. So the concept of giving one's head, sacrificing one's head, it started with Guru Nanak Dev Ji, and then it continued with every Guru. When we ਜਦੋਂ ਆਪਾਂ ਮੱਥਾ ਟੇਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ, what are we doing? We're essentially offering our head to the Guru. When Guru Gobind Singh Ji got up on the stage at Vaisakhi, and he demanded a head, he asked for a head. Now, it wasn't unusual at all, because Sikhi from day one has asked for a head. Alag gal ke bhi Guru Sahib da kautak si, it was a drama that those Panch Pyare understood, the others might not have understood. But Guru Gobind Singh Ji has always asked for a head. Guru Nanak Dev Ji has always asked for a head. So Amrit is the end of one life, which is our life, the one that I'm living for myself. And it's the beginning of an eternal life. That life which will never end. That it doesn't end with death, that it exists within the Guru. And because the Guru is without death, then that Sikh becomes without death. And how does that death happen? Shabd maro, fir jeevo sadhai, ta fir mar na hoi. That you will die in the Shabd, Guru's word, ode vich you will lose yourself. And when that death happens, then that physical death really doesn't matter anymore, because it's just another stage. Physical death becomes irrelevant because you are immortal in the Shabd, you are immortal in the Guru. So a Sikh becomes a Jinda Shaheed, ideally. That they are a living martyr to the Guru. And they are dead to themselves and alive for the Guru. So physical death is irrelevant to a Sikh. And that's where this concept of Shaheedi comes from. One thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is, rather than talking about dying for the Panth, how about living for it? When this Rajwana incident took place, a lot of people, whether they were Amritari, whether they're not Amritari, whether they just had a very remote connection to Sikhi, what they started saying was, I'm ready to die for the Panth. And what I want to talk about in today's presentation a little bit more is, you can't say that I want to die for the Panth if you haven't lived for the Panth. If you haven't lived for your Guru, you can't say that I will die for my Guru. Next slide. So the Sikh approach to Shaheedi. Bhai Gurdas Ji was a very amazing Gursikh. He was the nephew of Guru Amar Das Ji. But he had the time to spend, he spent time with Guru Amar Das Ji, Guru Ram Das Ji, Guru Arjan Dev Ji, Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji. And he was an ideal of Sikhi, what Sikhi should look like. So when he talks about Sikhi, it's from a first-hand perspective. What does he say? He says, and this is one of the few places where you'll find a definition of a Shaheed in Sikh literature. Bhai Gurdas Ji says, Murda hoye murid na galli hovna, that a Sikh should be dead to himself. That chela should be dead, but na galli hovna. It's not going to happen through talk. Talk is cheap. I've talked about this before, that simply saying that I'm a Sikh is not enough. It has to be a character. It has to be the following that you have of the Guru. That's where the real content of your character is. That's where you actually become a Sikh, not just in the talk. Sabr, Sidq, Shaheed, Param Pao Khovna. So here, Bhai Gurdas has laid out every trait that a Shaheed should have. Sabr means patience. Sidq means faith. And then Shaheed we understand. Param Pao Khovna. That this person loses all doubt, loses all fear. So to go over those qualities of a Shaheed that in the Sikh tradition we understand, that patience, faith, and losing all doubt and fear. So fearless and without doubt. There's another shabd that Bhai Gurdas has written to explain what a Sikh should be like. And I think this is very important to understand what a Sikh's attitude towards Shaheedi or service is. Talks about water. It talks about the analogy between water and what a Gursikh is. So Bhai Gurdas Ji says, Dharti paira het hai, dharti het fasanda pani. That the earth is below our feet, but even below the earth is water. Talking about nimarta, talking about humility. That the dust is considered the lowest, but water becomes even lower than the dust. Pani challa nivan no, pani challa nivan no nirmal seetal shuddh purani. That water goes downwards. Its very instinct is not to go up, it goes down. And what is it? By nature, it's pure, it's cool, it's very clean. Bahurangi ek rang hai, sabna andar ikko jani. That it may become different colors as the need arises, but at the end, it's in all of us and it remains its same color. ਤੱਤਾ ਹੋਵੇ ਧੁੱਪ ਵਿੱਚ ਛਾਵੇਂ ਠੰਡ ਵਿਰਤੀ ਹਾਣੀ ਤਪਦਾ ਪਰਉਪਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਠੰਡੇ ਪਰਉਪਕਾਰ ਵਿਹਾਣੀ. That it might become hot or cool depending on the sun or the moon or whatever else. But what does it do? It becomes hot or cold for parupakar, to serve others. So Gursikh in the same way, if they become hot or cold, their temperament becomes hot or cold, it's not something about ego, it's to serve others. Parupakar, that's the word you want to underline. Agan bujhaye tapt vich thanda hove bilam na aani. That when it becomes hot, when it's putting out a fire, if it puts out a fire, it might become hot, but it doesn't take any time to become cool again. Gursikhi di eo nishani. That this is the mark of a Gursikh. That even where they might become hot, for parupakar, to put out a fire, that they will come back to their natural state of purity, of coolness, very quickly. That is the ideal of a shaheed, that is the ideal of a Sikh. Next slide. Khalsa's call to arms. So, Bhai Maninder Singh yesterday mentioned that we aren't bound by either the Indian ideal of ahimsa or the belief that religions should not have a political aspect to them, or that they should never raise arms. We don't believe that. We believe that a Sikh carries arms, and we believe they can raise arms. And in fact, anyone that suggests otherwise, whether they're a Sikh or a non-Sikh, is misleading you. Anyone that says that if my family is being attacked, I will simply sit there, either they're, I would suggest, being ignorant, or they're lying to you. Anyone will protect their family. Anyone will protect themselves. A Sikh simply says it, that I won't just protect myself or my family, I'll protect anybody. But let's talk about that. At the outset, I will say Guru Gobind Singh Ji has explained, this is a very famous quote of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, "Jun karaz hama hilte dar guzast, halal ast burdan ba shamshir dast." This is a Persian verse from the Zafarnama that was written to Aurangzeb, that Guru Gobind Singh Ji is saying, when all other means have been exhausted, that means all others, then it is halal, it is right to take the sword in your hand. But what does that mean? It has to be with the approval of the Guru and the Panth. So how does the Guru give approval? We've already seen. That a Gursikh can become hot, a Gursikh can raise arms, but for what? For that key word, parupakar. And for a Gursikh, parupakar nitchitvate nahi kash poch, that a Gursikh is always trying to think of parupakar, always trying to think of how can I serve. And then the other is par brahm ke bhakt nirvaid. They don't do it out of hatred. They don't do it because they're an enemy of anybody. They're nirvaid, without hatred. So what is the Khalsa's mission? And this is what Vaheguru told Guru Gobind Singh Ji before sending him to this world. Guru Gobind Singh Ji in Bachittar Natak has written very clearly what he was sent here to do. And that is Dharm Chilavan Sant Ubaran. To propagate Dharm, righteousness. Sant Ubaran, to save Sants, those who are dedicated to Vaheguru. Dusht saban ko mool uparan. That those dushts, those tyrants, I'm here to root them out from the root. Mool means root. I'm here to pull their roots out. And that is what the Khalsa, which is the children of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, are here to do. So this has to be a selfless act, not a selfish one. Taking up arms for any other purpose is actually an insult to our Khalsa tradition and also to our arms. Guru Gobind Singh Ji has written, "Yehi hamare peer." So our weapons, a Khalsa's weapons, are their peer, their saint. You don't take your peer somewhere where you might embarrass your saint. You don't take your saint somewhere where it might be uncomfortable for him or her. You want to take your saint somewhere where the glory of that saint will increase. Those peer. So Shastar are our saints. Guru Gobind Singh Ji has given them the name of saint for this, that you want to treat them like saints, that put them in a situation where their glory will be increased, not will they be insulted. So when we pull our Shastar out, we say this jokingly, but it's actually a very serious situation where we pull our Kirpans out at our Gurdwara to argue over who gets to open the Golak. Those incidents, do they bring shobha, do they bring glory to our Shastras, or do they bring insult? So obviously that's not a Sikh warrior tradition. That's not in the Sikhi context of what's acceptable. Because we insult our Karpan. Karpan can only be used for parupakar. Next slide. Khalsa Khanda philosophy. This is an interesting concept that I want you to understand. The Khanda has two edges. And it comes to a point. I've put the picture there so you can all see. That it comes to one point. Might have two edges, but it ends at one point. And the Khanda represents Bibek. Represents unity out of duality. So where there are two competing concepts, the Khalsa isn't thrown off by that. The West is, often, but the Khalsa doesn't get thrown off by duality. We understand it to be unity. So what does that mean? Miri versus Piri. In Western tradition, we also hear about the separation of church and state, because that upsets them, that it seems as though it's two different things. How can it exist in one? No. We say Miri and Piri exist together. We say that Sant can exist with a Sipahi. They has to exist together. We say that Shantras, which means the calm nature, has to exist with the Biras. Shantras and Biras exist at the same place. And Josh exists with Hosh. You know what Josh means? Feeling passion. And Hosh means rational thought. They both have to exist at the same place. And this is Bibek Dan. Bibek means Be two to Ek. That is the symbol of the Khanda. Khanda represents Bibek. How is this possible? It's only possible through Naam, Bani, and Ret. So no one can, through an intellectual exercise, unify these two things within themselves. They cannot become a Sant and a Sipahi just by thinking about it. They cannot put Josh and Hosh together just by thinking about it. It has to come through following the Guru's path. This is what the Guru's Shabd magically is able to do. It's able to put these competing things inside you as one. And there's one other thing that it's important to point out, that this is written by Ranveer Singh's book, and I've heard from other Gursikhs, that ideally a Shaheed is one who has had darshan of Vaheguru, Jyot Vigas. But Bhai Sahib has written in his book that where someone on the orders of the Panth or for the service of the Panth sacrifices their life, at that point the Guru will keep the lodge of the Amrit. Jehड़ा Amrit ਛਕਿਆ ਉਹਦੀ ਲਾਜ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਰੱਖਦੇ ਨੇ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਕਿਣਕਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗਿਆ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਛਕਣ ਵੇਲੇ, that will then sprout into a plant. It will show its color, that you will become a shaheed. But it's not the ideal. The ideal is someone that has had darshan of Vaheguru, that is one with Vaheguru in their life, and that they can then sacrifice their life for the service of others. Next slide. So the Khalsa's Beed Ras. I mentioned two things, Beed Ras and Shant Ras. There are two types of generally two types of Shaheediyan that we understand in the Sikh tradition. One is Beed Ras. Beed Ras means the warrior that fights on the battlefield. And the other is Shant Ras, the one that dies, is executed, is essentially martyred without putting up resistance, without fighting. There's two things, but they don't exist separately. They exist as one. So Khalsa's Beed Ras, it exists to protect those in need and destroy oppression. It's without anger, animosity, or ego. So that's very important. We mentioned that at the start, that a normal warrior fights in anger and ego. A Sikh will not fight with any of those. Desire to sacrifice for love. The desire is that I may become a sacrifice for my Guru. And there's so many Tukka and Gurbani. There's other faiths that might sacrifice goats, that might sacrifice animals to Vaheguru. And a Sikh in the Sikh tradition will say, "Ha ke bal 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 sad balehar," that I am not even enough. If I sacrifice everything of myself, that's not enough to be a sacrifice to you. It's not a worthy sacrifice. In Japji Sahib, "Vaar na jawa ek var," that I can't even become a sacrifice one time. So forget sacrificing animals. We don't even consider sacrificing ourselves to be enough of a worthy sacrifice for Vaheguru. When this warrior fights, they have an inner connection with Vaheguru that's unbreaking. There's no fear because Amrit is inside them. They've already died physically. To death, it's irrelevant. Resort to arms is for the universal good. When they fight, those people they fight, they're not doing anything bad to them. They're in fact doing them a favor. Because they're conducting pop. They're engaging in activities that are bad for their spirituality even. So putting an end to that, either by turning them away from their course of action, or in fact even by ending them if that has to be the case. It's putting an end to activities that are in fact bad for their own spirituality. And the power behind the Sikh is Namras. You have the physical khanda that is in the hand of Baba Deep Singh, but the khanda that you cannot see is the internal Nam, the khanda that is always going. So while that external khanda is being wielded by the Sikh warrior, that external weapon is being used, the internal Nam khanda is going at the same time. I want to give you a couple of examples. First of all, Guru Har Gobind Sahib. Guru Har Gobind is considered the first Sikh warrior. When he fought Pende Khan, this is the picture of Pende Khan. Pende Khan was very close to Guru Har Gobind Sahib. And he cheated Guru Har Gobind Sahib. I'm not going to tell the whole story. He cheated Guru Har Gobind Sahib, and Guru Har Gobind Sahib threw him out of the darbar. He went and joined with the Mughals. He joined with them, and he brought an army to attack Kartarpur Sahib. Now, imagine that. Someone that's been your ally since he was born, essentially. He comes after betraying you with an army. He joins with the enemy. What sort of feeling would a normal so-called warrior feel? It would be of intense anger, of, I have to destroy this person. But when Guru Har Gobind Sahib sees him on the battlefield, he doesn't have any anger on his face. He says, go first. You're here to fight me. Pende Khan had declared to the Mughals that no one else can fight Guru Har Gobind. I'll fight him. I'll show you how he's defeated. Guru Har Gobind Sahib said, go, do what you want. He gives his first var. It doesn't land. Guru Har Gobind Sahib gives him another opportunity. Second time, again, nothing happens. Third opportunity, and then Guru Har Gobind Sahib replies and cuts him down with one blow. Pende Khan falls to the ground. And what does Guru Har Gobind Sahib do? He goes down on his knees, he takes his shield and he covers Pende Khan's face from the sun, that his face isn't going to burn. There's no anger. There's no hatred. And he says to Pende Khan, Kalma padla. He sees that his last moments are here now. He says, read the Kalma. And Pende Khan, he's touched by the Guru. He sees the Guru's face, and his head is now on Guru Har Gobind Sahib's lap. His face is being shaded by Guru Sahib's shield. And he says, I don't need to read the Kalma. I've seen your face. And he dies. There's no hatred when that person is on the ground. Bhai Kanhaiya ji, we all know this story. Bhai Kanhaiya ji says that I can't see any enemies. Once they're wounded, they're all the same to me. And Guru Gobind Singh ji agrees and says, don't just give them water, give them medicine, tie their wounds. Guru Gobind Singh ji, whoever's seen Guru Gobind Singh ji's arrows will know that they used to have gold bands around them. So, in modern traditional understandings of warfare, if you want to kill someone, it's good in fact if their family suffers. Guru Gobind Singh ji insisted that his arrows have to have gold bands around them, so that if someone is shot by them, if they die, and inevitably I would expect they would have, the family can afford a funeral, they can take care of themselves with the gold that's attached to the arrow. There's no hatred here. It's a question of putting this person off the path that they've chosen, which is destroying humanity. That's the whole purpose. There's compassion here. This is a compassionate warrior that is without hatred. I can't stress that enough. And the Sikh is fighting out of love for the Guru. It's a love story. That the Guru says, I will do everything for you, and the Sikh says, no, I will do anything I can for you. It's like the love between milk and water. This is an example we get out of Gurbani, that The water says, I will destroy myself first, that I won't let anything happen to you. And the milk says, no, I will come out of the pot. If you're boiling us, that I will come out of the pot to put the fire out, but I won't let anything happen to you. It's intense love between the Sikh and the Guru that the Sikh says, I will do anything for you. Next slide. And the other side to that is Khalsa Shantras. Shantras means that Shahidi that happens not on the battlefield but at the hands of the executioner. And there's a tuk from Gurbani that says, Kahan pe ho jo tan pe ho chen chen, prem jaye to dar paye tero jan. That what do I care if my body's being cut to pieces? It doesn't matter to me if my body's being cut to pieces. If my love for you is being affected, then I'm going to be afraid. But if my body's being cut to pieces, what difference does it make? It makes no difference. It exists at one with Bidras. Shantras doesn't mean that you don't have any options. It doesn't mean that you accept this pain because you have no choice. It is an act of strength. It is a choice that a Gursikh makes, that I will go this way, and we'll talk about why, but it is not a compulsion that someone's being killed and they have no choice and they've chosen Shantras. This Ahimsa movement in India, it is the complete opposite. It's because they feel powerless. They feel they have no option. So if you have no option, that the best thing is to just close your mouth and say, I'm non-violent, that I will accept I will accept death quietly. No, a Gursikh has all the power they need, but they will then go forward and still accept that death. And it's without any fear. So what are the reasons for a Shantra Shahidi? And there are 4 general ones that I've outlined. There are others as well, but these are the 4 general ones. One is exposing tyranny by enduring it on oneself. So to expose the tyranny of a regime by taking all of that punishment upon oneself. Inspiring others then to fight against that tyranny. By becoming an example, inspiring the others around you. Third, allowing the karmic debt of oppressors to accumulate and then destroy that evil. We believe in karma. We believe that regimes have karma as well. That if you kill innocents, especially innocents that have a lot of bhakti, you are bringing yourself to an end very, very quickly. And then finally, the orders of the Panth. Now, this is a picture of Guru Arjan Dev Ji, who was our first Shaheed. Most of us know the story, but I want to point out how he was made a Shaheed. The Mughals claimed descent from the Mongols, so Genghis Khan. And the Mongols and the Mughals had a belief that someone who is spiritually inclined, you shouldn't spill their blood or it'll destroy your regime, it'll destroy your rule. So they had a special way of killing people who are spiritual. They called it Yasa. And Jahangir has specifically put in his memoirs that Guru Arjan should be put to death through Yasa. So that's why he wasn't cut with a blade. He was first put on the Tatti Tavi. He was then put in the boiling cauldron. And the third step, which Guru Arjan Dev Ji didn't get to in our understanding, is to be sewn alive in a hide. So a fresh hide from a cow or some other animal, they would take this and they would sew the person alive in it. So imagine that's a stomach or a hide of this freshly killed animal, and then they throw you in the sun and it slowly shrinks and shrivels and crushes you inside of it. Guru Arjan Dev Ji was the embodiment of Shantras for us. He had every power. Mia Mead, according to the story, came to Guru Arjan and said, if you want, I can use my spiritual power to make Delhi and Lahore fight. They will destroy themselves. And Guru Arjan Dev Ji said, so if I wanted to, I don't have to go through this. But there's a reason for it. And Guru Arjan Dev Ji became an example to us. Because the Gurus never asked us to do something they didn't do themselves or couldn't show us first. They showed us how to go through the Shahidi in the ideal manner. Tera kiya meetha lage. That whatever you're doing is sweet to me. Next slide. Other examples according to that same theme. Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib. How does Guru Gobind Singh describe Guru Tegh Bahadur Shahidi? Tikar for dili sir prabhur kiya pyan. That he took the vase of his body, Guru Tegh Bahadur, Tikar for, कि अपना तांदा जरा ठीकरा सी, he smashed it on the head of the Mughal Empire. Tegh Bahadur si kriya kari na kinhu on. What Guru Tegh Bahadur did, no one else could have done. And it's a recognized fact. Other religions might be based on mythology or stories. We shouldn't fall into that same trap. It's a recognized fact that after Guru Tegh Bahadur's Shahidi, after that period in time, the Mughal rule never ascended. It was a regular descent. It was a constant descent. Guru Tegh Bahadur smashed his own self on this tyrannical rule and caused it to finish. And at the same time, there were 3 Gursikhs that accompanied him and also went through the same tortures and same Shahidi. Another example, we know a lot about Bhai Taru Singh, but Bhai Taru Singh, if you read Panth Prakash, which is written by Ratan Singh Pangu. Who was Ratan Singh Pangu? Yesterday, Maninder Singh talked about Bhai Sukha Singh and Mehtab Singh. Bhai Mehtab Singh's grandson is Ratan Singh Pangu. And he had first-hand knowledge of those incidents that took place then. So under all this oppression, Bhai Taru Singh, most of us have seen the cartoon, but what was the thinking behind that? Why did Bhai Taru Singh do that? And Panth Prakash says this, laying the blame for his sacrifice squarely on Lahore's Nawab, Bhai Taru Singh would make the Nawab face divine retribution. Keeping his faith with hair intact till last breath, Bhai Taru Singh would lay the blame squarely on the Mughals. Acquiescing and abiding with the will divine, would Taru Singh succeed in proving the Mughals guilty. Praise be to the Singhs who wage a religious war. Praise be to him who sacrifices, accusing the Mughals. So Bhai Taru Singh, according to Ratan Singh Pangu, his ideal was that I'm going to go to Dargah and I'm going to testify that this is what happened to me and this regime deserves to be destroyed. That because of his sacrifice, Vaheguru will do retribution and destroy the evil. The interesting part that most of us don't know, we know Sukha Singh, Mehtab Singh. Most of us don't know that Bhai Mehtab Singh was the best friend of Bhai Taru Singh. They had shaked Amrit together. So Bhai Mehtab Singh, we know the story of him cutting off the head of Masa Rangad. What we don't know is that after that, he was an outlaw. He was an outlaw with his Jatha. He had stayed in Punjab, but he had about 50 Singhs. And when he found out that Bhai Taru Singh has courted arrest, he said, my best friend has gone, and I'm not going to be an outlaw anymore. I'm not going to run around being afraid that I might be captured. I'm going to go with him. I'm going to join him on his mission. So Bhai Mehtab Singh's Shahidi actually happened because he went and presented himself in front of the Nawab and said, do whatever you want. You have Bhai Taru Singh. My only request is that you let me see him once and then you can do whatever you want. Bhai Mehtab Singh had darshan of Bhai Taru Singh, and then he was put on the charkhadi and he was broken on the charkhadi. So this amazing warrior who could have done whatever he wanted. He wasn't powerless. He had all the power. He had a Jatha of Singhs. He'd already cut off someone, a very powerful person's head, Masa Rangad's head. He could have done whatever he wanted, but no. He joined Bhai Taru Singh as an act of showing A, the tyranny of the regime, and second, being a testimony, a shaheed testimony in front of Vaheguru that this is the oppression, it needs to end. Next slide. Modern day examples. Shant Ras and Bir Ras together. One of the best examples that I've read of is of Bhai Sarwan Singh Phallewal. Now, Bhai Sarwan Singh Phallewal's story comes in the book Rangle Sajjan. He was a companion of Bhai Rantir Singh. And the story goes that he would fall into meditation, into samadhi, just walking around. So he would be standing, his Naam, the Khanda is always going, and sometimes it's going so strongly that he loses awareness of where he is. So the Singhs are going on a train, and he's standing in line for the train. And while waiting, he's jumping Naam, and he falls into samadhi. And the crowd behind him is increasing. People are getting agitated. Why isn't this guy moving in line? And a British police officer comes, and he shakes him. He says, move, move. 2 or 3 times he shakes him. And eventually, he slaps Bhai Sarwan Singh. And Bhai Sarwan Singh is awoken by this. and everyone is watching. The Sikh has just been slapped by this British officer. What is he going to do? So Bhai Sarwan Singh understands the situation, that I've been holding the line up. This man has just slapped me. He puts his hand together and he asks for forgiveness. Said, I didn't know, I'm sorry. There's a Hindu gentleman there, and he starts mocking Bhai Sarwan Singh. And he starts mocking the Singhs, saying, look at the big Singh. He's gotten afraid of this British officer. Look at that. Punjabi mein mok maar ke dekh lo. So he's mocking him, and Bhai Sarwan Singh and the rest of the Singhs aren't saying anything. He's saying, look, they're afraid of the British. All the Singhs get on the train. This Hindu gentleman gets on the train as well. And there's a break. Trains used to stop for breaks. And the Singhs get off. And Bhai Sarwan Singh hears a commotion in a wooded area. And what had happened was 3 British soldiers, 3, had taken an Indian woman into the secluded area and were going to rape her. Bhai Sarwan Singh goes, hears the commotion, sees what's happening, and he single-handedly beats these 3 and binds them. And everyone else then hears the sounds, and they come and see this one Singh, the same Singh, has now tied up these 3 British officers, and he's saying to this Hindu woman, this Indian woman, that what do you want to do? Do you want these people to be charged? Do you want to take them to the police station, or do you want money? And she says, just give me money. And these British officers then beg too that we'll just give the money. So they give money, and she says, let them go. This Hindu gentleman then says, I take everything back. I didn't understand. That I didn't know Singhs were like this. So where it was for his own ego, I can say for myself honestly, if I'm slapped by somebody, I don't think I have it in me to ignore it. I will do something about it. But imagine the heights of Gursikhi, that your own ego, where nothing else was involved, just his own ego, he didn't do anything. He came to Nimarta. And that's where Bhagt Sheikh Farid ji's sloks, Bure da bhala kar, gussa manna handai. So many other sloks that talk about if someone slaps you, it's okay. Doesn't matter. That's the kamai of that Gursikh. But when it came to saving someone that needed help, saving someone that was being oppressed, he single-handedly defeated these 3 British officers. I want to talk also about the Nankana Sahib Saka of 1921. This was an example of the Panth, as Bhai Sahib said yesterday. The Panth had decided that Nankana Sahib, which was a Gurdwara controlled by a Mahant, the Mahant had been raping women there, gambling, drinking. The Panth wanted control of this Gurdwara. But the Panth decided that no weapons will be used, no violence will be used. Bhai Lakshman Singh led a jatha to court arrest there, to protest there. And Bhai Lakshman Singh, he had all the power he wanted. The Singhs were trained how to fight. There were some former soldiers there. They could have done whatever they wanted. But when they got there, bound by the hukum of the Panth, they were cut piece by piece. In the most brutal manner, they were executed. Bhai Lakshman Singh was first shot, and then he was hung upside down from a tree, and he was burnt alive. But he had sworn, under the orders of the Panth, that I will not raise a hand. That's another example of Shahidi that shamed the regime, that at the next instant they gave the keys to Nankana Sahib to the Panth. He accomplished what he wanted to do. He became an example to us. So it's not always violence that a Shaheed has to go through to accomplish his mission or her mission. The 13 Shaheeds of 1978, I want to talk a little bit about this as well. 1978 woke the Panth up. But what was it essentially? It was 13 Gursikhs that died. But who were they? They were all Naam Abhyas Kamai Wale. And we to this day still talk about what they did. So I think we all know about the Nirankari Saka, what the Nirankaris were all about. But imagine, we talk about the Biras of Baba Deep Singh, we talk about the Puratan warriors. We don't focus, and maybe on purpose that we're not allowed to focus on the warriors like Bhai Fauja Singh. Bhai Fauja Singh went there without any significant arms, just with his regular Taal, Karpan. And when they were attacked, he fought in a way that was unimaginable. He couldn't be stopped. He was shot in the eye. There's a picture that is quite graphic of Bhai Fauja Singh's dead body. His eye is completely destroyed. That didn't stop him. He took his damalla, tied it over his eye, and continued to fight. Finally, a police officer empties his gun into Bhai Sahib's chest, and even that doesn't kill Bhai Sahib. He continues meditating on Vaheguru. Bhai Avtar Singh, who was another Singh there, seeing that the end is coming, he sits down and he falls into a samadhi, and his death took place because while he was in samadhi, they cracked his skull with sticks. These Singhs, with their 13 shahidiyan, they set the course for the Panth for the next, I don't know how many years. So we talk about 1984 when thousands and thousands of Sikhs were killed, but we still talk about 1978, where these 13 Sikhs and their Naam Kamai set an example for all of us. They changed the course of the Panth because of their Naam Kamai. And finally, we talk about Sant Jarnail Singh being a revolutionary leader of the 20th century. We talk about him being the last Sikh leader who we can look up to. But who was Sant Jarnail Singh? There's a book by a professor called Harpal Singh Pannu. He's just recently written it, actually. And he writes that we used to go to Sant Kartar Singh and spend time with him. And we used to see Bhai Jarnail Singh in the Jatha. And he was always doing part. And we didn't like him because of that, because he would never socialize with us. We used to hang out with Bhai Amrik Singh. He used to be just like us. He used to study. He used to joke around with us. Bhai Jarnail Singh would not do any of those things. And then one day we complained to Sant Kartar Singh, कि भई किहो जा आया? And Sant Kartar Singh said to them, these were all educated young boys. He said, Changa Sikh hai. And Harpal Singh says that we replied to Sant Kartar Singh, oh vi Sikh hai, asi vi Sikh hai, kada prashad ta asi sare hi hain. And he goes, kada prashad, ede kada prashad ko zyada hi kyo pya lagda. He goes, a little bit too much kyo in his kada prashad, something wrong with his head. So when it was time to pick the next successor of Sant Kartar Singh, they were supporting Bhai Amrik Singh. That we think Bhai Amrik Singh, who's an educated MA, he should be the next Jathedar of the Taksal. But all the other Singhs in the Taksal, they were saying, no, Sant Jarnail Singh should be the next Mukhi. And he goes, we lost. We weren't happy about it. But when Sant Jarnail Singh got up on the stage for the first time, he spoke with such clarity, with such purpose, without any notes. We were spellbound. And Badal, same Badal that we see today, had gotten up to speak before Sant Jarnail Singh. And he'd said, Sant Kartar Singh was a great man. And if the Taksal needs anything that you can ask today and our government will give it to you, because he was the chief minister in 1978 as well. And before 1978, this is 1977 or 76. Sant Jarnail Singh gets up after in his speech and he closes with this. He says, the chief minister Badal has just said that if we want anything, we should ask now. He says, this Taksal is following the path of Guru Gobind Singh. We don't need anything. So I will say to Prakash Singh Badal, if there's anything you want, ask from us today, and we'll give it to you. And all these people that thought he was a mindless person that has too much kyo in his prashad, they were amazed that he's already taking a panga with the chief minister. What's going on here? That how did he get all this gyan? So the leadership of Sant Jarnail Singh, once again, I want to focus on this because he was seen as the last significant Sikh leader that we all look up to. He did support Hathiarband Sangharsh. He did encourage followers to take up arms, but when? After 1978, the court case against Gurbachan Narkatari, he waited until that concluded. So the court cases against all those people that were accused of killing the 13 Singhs, they concluded with acquittals for everybody. No one was convicted. He saw that the system isn't working. Young Sikhs are being picked up and being killed. These 13 people have not been convicted by the court system. And when he saw that the state isn't following its own rules, the state isn't following any regulations, then how can we possibly operate in that same system if they're not following the rules? So we will have to follow the rules that it's a natural instinct. It's a basic human right that you can defend yourself. And that is the context of Sikhs taking up arms in 1984 and afterwards. But even those Singhs that fought in the Darbar Sahib complex, it wasn't as though they spent their entire day in arms training. There are several books that will say that Sant Jarnail Singh had a special schedule for those Singhs that were going to be with him in 1984. That schedule revolved around incredible amounts of part. So that power, where did it come from? That's what I want to talk about a little bit. Next slide. Reflecting on the examples of the gurus, but particularly Guru Gobind Singh. We have a lot of fake gurus today, and we're all concerned. We have Ashutosh, we have Satya Sauda, we have Radha Swamis, we have Namtaris. But what we forget is, at the times of the gurus, there were as many fake gurus, if not more. Prithi Chand had his own data. Tirmal had his own data. You had all kinds of offshoots from the Sikh tradition that were claiming, like Niranjaniye, all kinds, Handaliye. How did the gurus deal with that? One Tirmal, who was the older brother of Guru Har Rai Sahib, he was upset that Guru Tegh Bahadur has become the next guru. So what does he do? He organizes a mob to shoot and try and kill Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib. Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib's matha is skimmed by this bullet. The blood is coming. They see that they weren't able to kill him. They run away. Makhan Shah Lubana, we know that name, but he used to be not just a rich businessman, he used to have a group of armed people with him. They go and loot the data of Tirmal, tie Tirmal up, and march him to Guru Tegh Bahadur. Guru Tegh Bahadur could have said, destroy them, kill them, take all their saman. Guru Tegh Bahadur said, let them go. Even Ad Granth Sahib, that Guru Arjan Dev Ji wrote, he gave back, said, I don't need it. And what did Tirmal say in return? Tirmal recognized, he said, these are the qualities of a real guru that I accept. Guru Har Gobind Sahib, he took the armed path. Meherban, or Prithi Chand, that line, Guru Arjan Dev Ji's brother, he said, this is going against the Sikh tradition. I'll do something different. Prithi Chand's tradition continued for several generations and in fact controlled Darbar Sahib. It controlled Darbar Sahib. The gurus could have sent armies there, but they won the hearts and minds of the people. They didn't exterminate them, they didn't kill them off. They showed them that our path is right. And eventually the Sikhs of Amritsar, in fact, invited Guru Gobind Singh to come take control of Darbar Sahib. Guru Gobind Singh didn't do it by force. Guru Gobind Singh Ji, I'm coming to a conclusion. We talk about him raising arms. But I want you to look at that example. His two sons, older, are killed in front of his eyes. His mother and two younger sons are killed at Fatehgarh Sahib, at Sirhind. What does he do? He could have raised another army and challenged Aurangzeb. He could have done it. There's no reason why he couldn't have. But he writes the Zafarnama and exposes Aurangzeb for what he's done. He says, you've oppressed people, you've lied, you've cheated. And what is the end? Does he say, I'm going to destroy you now? No. He says, let's have a meeting. I want to meet with you. After Aurangzeb dies and isn't able to meet, he meets with his successor, Bahadur Shah. Why did Guru Gobind Singh Ji go from Punjab to the south? Because Bahadur Shah's his caravan was going south in the same direction. Meetings were taking place ongoing. Guru Gobind Singh attempted to talk to the regime to set them on the right path. When he saw that they're not going to be corrected, then he sends Baba Banda Singh, and Baba Banda Singh, as we know, shook the Mughal regime to its core in Punjab. But that shows that violence is not our first resort. It is our last resort when everything else has been exhausted. And Guru Gobind Singh illustrated this in the most extreme way. His own 4 sons are killed by this regime and he says, let's talk. Let's have a meeting. So I want us to think about what means are available to us before taking arms and when is it justified to react physically. That's for us to think about, and maybe we can talk about it in our discussion groups. But I just want us to have a final reflection, which is instead of focusing on dying for the Guru, which is what a lot of young people I see, they have that as the ideal, that becoming a shaheed, that's, I'll sacrifice my life for the Panth, looking for an opportunity. Why not live for the Guru? If you haven't lived for the Guru, you cannot die for the Guru, which means if you aren't following Sikhi, you don't have Sikhi in your heart, you cannot say that I can become a shaheed. Yesterday, Maninder Singh talked about how the Panth almost immediately, within a year or two, would always come back. So we talked about Sukha Singh Mehtab Singh cutting off the head of Masarangad. We talked about Jassa Singh Aluwalia, who had led the Khalsa Fauj after the Vadaka Lukara. Where are they today? Today, our situation is that we don't have those leaders anymore. And those leaders, what were their jivans like? What are our jivans like? Their jivans were based fundamentally on the power of Naam. Their power didn't come through their strategies. They didn't come through because they were very learned. They were learned, but it didn't come through just Syanap. It came through the Tej Pratap of Naam and Guru Sahib's Kirpa. Guru Sahib has already told us the solution. Guru Sahib has already promised us Raj. Guru Sahib has already promised us whatever we want. Jab lag Khalsa rahe nyara, tab lag tej diyo main sara. That I will give all my power to the Khalsa as long as they stay nyara. Jabe gehe biparan ki reet, main na karo inki prateet. That when they go the path of the Brahmins, when they go the path of the world, then I won't trust them anymore. Then they can do whatever they want. If they want to be smarter than what I've told them, then let them go on their own path. Do we have the Tej of the Guru, or is something else happening? So obviously, we're not following the path of the Guru, and that's why we're seeing such serious problems in our Panth today. What we focus on are symptoms. We say our leadership, Badal is leading the Panth to corruption. SGPC is very bad. These are symptoms. What is the disease? What's the real disease? Badal is eventually going to die. Who's going to replace him? Is it going to be someone better than Badal? It's going to be someone worse than Badal. The SGPC, how is that going to reform? If Makkad goes away one day, Avtar Singh Makkad, let's say he resigns tomorrow, do we have someone better? We talk about even Khalistan. I don't see how the politics of Khalistan, based on our current spiritual levels, will be any better than the politics of Punjab. What does that mean? It means recognize not the symptoms, but the disease. The disease is that we've broken from our spiritual connection. We've broken from the Guru's path. We don't have the Guru's kirpa and the power of the Guru anymore. And the only solution is to build that jivan within ourselves. I told the story of Sant Jarnail Singh's past to show that education is important, but what he had was bigger than education. He had the soji, he had that power of Naam and Gurbani. And without that, we can never be successful. And we can never claim to be shaheeds, we can never claim to live our lives for the Guru or for the Panth. The Guru is still asking for heads today. Guru Sahib is still calling out for our heads. He's been calling out for our heads since Guru Nanak Dev Ji's time. Question is, who's going to answer that call? The Panth needs all of us today. The Panth needs all of us to do seva. But that seva has to start with our own niji jivans. Guru Sahib is asking that you connect back to your own spirituality. And that's it's not something just for the world, it's for your own selfish happiness as well. If you do that, you'll be happy, but you can also make a difference for the Panth. So with that, I know I'm over time. I hope that answers your questions about Shahidi, and I'm more than happy to talk more in our workshop about it. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Any questions? I think we're good then.
I'm just going to reiterate some of the announcements from before the lecture because not everyone was here. There was a request from Jasvinder Singh. He's one of the Sevadars. Is he here right now? No, right? Okay. He's doing Langar Seva. So he is? Where is he here? Yeah, come. Okay, so his request, he'll make that request. The other requests are regarding, so his request is regarding cliques, so we'll get to that in a minute. The other request was regarding Darbar, which was there's 2 darbar times in the day, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. The second time I think is 5:30 p.m. to 7:45 p.m. Sometimes the evening darbar goes until a little bit longer, till around 8. But those are the 2 darbar times. Please be to darbar on time. It's great if you come to darbar earlier than 4 a.m. But do not come to darbar earlier if you're planning to leave before 6 a.m. Okay? A lot of people today miss Nitnem. You shouldn't be missing Nitnem. The point of camp is to do Nitnem and Sangat together. So if you can be in darbar for 3 hours in the morning, come from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. If you can be in darbar for 6 hours, come from 2 a.m. and stay for Asadiwa and leave at 8 a.m. If you can only be there for 2 hours, come from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. It's a really kind of common sense guideline. Follow the camp schedule. If you want to do extra, you're more than welcome to do extra. And everyone, I think we already did this today, everyone sit together. Everyone make more of an effort to sing. Some people still are hesitant to sing in darbar. No one is going to judge your voice, or I don't know what the reason for the hesitancy is. Don't be hesitant. Go to darbar, sing in darbar, be a part of darbar. We want to kind of make us, Navreet Singh. Is Navreet Singh here right now? Bhai Navreet Singh? Okay. Bhai Navreet Singh talked yesterday about making us one big clique. Okay, you're right there. I saw him now. Okay, so making us one big clique. Sorry, it's just kind of hard to see people because of the lighting. So Bhai Navreet Singh talked about making us one big clique yesterday. So everyone just, you don't just sing with your friend. Somebody who's doing kirtan for the first time, there's more reason to sing with that person who is maybe a little bit shy about doing kirtan. So just think more and more about being, a positive force, coming to the darbar on time, and it's just for your own benefit. You'll have a really good camp experience that way. Okay? So without further ado, we'll pass it over to Jaswinder Singh for a couple of minutes, talk about cliques. But after this, we have our workshops. I'll just give you the workshop schedule right now. Group 1 is here in the auditorium with Bhai Balpreet Singh. Group 2 is in the Langar Hall with Bhai Navreet Singh. Group 3 is in the Darbar Hall with Bhai Dalwinder Singh. And Group 4 is with Bhai Moninder Singh in the Langar Hall side room. Is Bhai Moninder Singh here yet? I don't think so. He should be here soon. But he's doing the Pantika Shurukshta, that's in the Langar Hall side room. So just follow those places, whichever group you were part of yesterday, be part of that same group today so you can attend all the 4 workshops during the week. Bhai Jaswinder Singh?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I just wanted to reiterate the point yesterday made by Bhai Navreet Singh. I guess being British, we're just sort of brutal, we're just honest the way it is. Talking about cliques, going by my experience last year when I came, it took one Gursikh to show me a bit of pyar, turn my whole life around, brought me back to Sikhi after 10 years. The whole idea is, इकट्ठे होके बैठिए एकता बनाइए even when we're in langar halls, try not sitting next to your friends, sit next to somebody that you don't know, get to know them, just make them, you share ideas, you get to know each other, share your experiences of the camp. I think, and that's what we're lacking at this one at the moment, because people are going off in their own little groups, doing their own little things, nobody's really getting to know anybody. And I think as a whole in the Panth, the biggest lack we have today is unity. There really isn't no unity, and we've got to make a start somewhere. So why not do it today here? So I'm just requesting a humble request, get to know the person next to you, talk to them, get out of your comfort zones, and experience, I think that's the only way you're going to get the full experience of Khalsa camp here today. All right? Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Oh, sorry. Yeah. One other request is, a request to the Bibiyans actually. Seva le tusi aap ut ke more hovo. Whether it comes to taking Hukmnama, whether it comes to doing Sukhasan, aap ut ke more hovo. Don't wait to be asked. We need Bibiyan to come forward themselves and actually be actively participating. I don't think it's really fair on the Singhs all the time to be sort of heading or going forward. Maybe you guys are shy, I don't know what it is, but oddam dahalo, more hovo, and just be at the forefront of things and share the experience. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
So we have a 10-minute break right now just for transition. So if you're in group 1, you can just kind of stay here because your workshop is here today. Everybody else, we have about a 10-minute transition time right now to go to where you're supposed to be going.